I'm here with Aaron Mate from Pushback on the Gray Zone, and we're going to cover this story right now because Biden's secret emails have been confirmed. So remember, this was the story that broke right before the election last year. This was the story that broke right before the election. And then guess what? Twitter and Facebook wouldn't let that story be disseminated. You were not allowed to share it. And who better to decide than Facebook and Twitter, because they always get the story right. Yeah, keep in mind, Facebook was teaming up with that great fact checkers like the folks over at Snopes while they did this. You know, Snopes, we just revealed that the guy who ran Snopes is a serial plagiarist, right? And he had to step down from Snopes because he's a serial plagiarist. So that's who these people are, okay? And they're going to be the people who tell you what's real and what's not. Mark Zuckerberg, Jack from Twitter. Unbelievable. So Twitter took action on Wednesday by preventing users from sharing links to the story in tweets and direct messages. So if you went to tweet it, this is what it got. Your tweet couldn't be sent because this link has been identified by Twitter or our partners as being potentially harmful. Potentially harmful to who? To who? To Joe Biden. Because it's a real story. Wow, Twitter going even further than Facebook and is no longer letting people tweet the New York Post story. This is what pops up. Facebook also took action to limit the article spread, but offered few details regarding those steps. And guess what? So now we have an independent source who confirmed the authenticity of, it was actually a political writer. It come out in a book he wrote. And by the way, that's the look on his face when the cashier told him that they were out of Funyuns. That's like that's the look of a guy who bought porn at a gas station on a weekly basis from 1980 to 2005. That's the look he has on his face. Boy, I wish late night comedians were more into Hunter Biden because he's there's just an endless amount of jokes you can make about Hunter Biden. And political reporter Ben Schreckinger spent months investigating the key documents published by the New York Post and found definitive proof that these emails and related documents are indisputably authentic. Now, there are lots of outlets that had proof that they were indisputably authentic before this, but they weren't establishment people. So that's why nobody reported it or took it serious. And so here we go. A 2015 email from Ukrainian businessman Vadim Pasharsky thanking Hunter Biden for giving an opportunity to meet your father and spent some time together is genuine. Okay, that is genuine. Pochensky was an advisor to Burisma Holdings, the Ukrainian natural gas company on whose board Hunter Biden sat for up to $50,000 a month while his father was vice president. So that makes that a scammy, shady deal. Imagine if it was Trump. A second email from 2017 that outlines a deal between the Biden family and a now defunct Chinese energy company, also real. What did that email contain, Jimmy? I'll tell you. That email sent by Biden's business partner, James Gillar, includes the line 10 held by H. That means 10 is 10%. H is Hunter Biden. 10 held by H for the big guy. And the big guy is Joe Biden. So that's what the email said. We're holding 10% of this deal for Joe Biden, and it's being held by his son, Hunter. And that was said by Hunter Biden's former business partner and a recipient on the email. He said that referring to Hunter holding a 10% stake in the deal for Joe Biden. And you want to, so look at the date on this. This is October 22nd. Here is that guy, Hunter Biden's business partner, Tony Bobulinski. I love that name. And here we go.
On May 13th, 2017, I received an email concerning allocation of equity, which says 10% held by H for the big guy. In that email, there's no question that H stands for Hunter, big guy for his father, Joe Biden, and Jim for Jim Biden. In fact, Hunter often referred to his father as the big guy or my chairman. On numerous occasions, it was made clear to me that Joe Biden's involvement was not to be mentioned in writing, but only face to face. In fact, I was advised by Gilliar and Walker that Hunter and Jim Biden were paranoid about keeping Joe Biden's involvement secret.
So that is Hunter Biden's business partner authenticating the emails and the shady business dealings on October 22nd, 2020. Here is NPR on October 22nd, 2020. Why haven't you seen any stories from NPR about the New York Post Hunter Biden story? Well, we don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories. And we don't want to waste the listeners' and readers' time on stories that are just pure distractions. So that's NPR, again, being 100% corrupt and censoring an accurate story and calling that responsible. They did the exact opposite. Guess who does that? That's called state media in China. That's North Korea garbage. That's fucking communist Russia stuff. And they're doing it right here. And they're doing it willingly. Why? NPR gets their funding from the Congress. They're all shit libs. They get their funding from billionaires who don't like Trump. And that's the same day that Hunter Biden's business partner was confirming it's true, they were lying. And by the way, they're not going to lose their Twitter account for that. They're not going to get flagged on YouTube for a community guideline strike for lying. But if you posted that story, you would get a community strike. CNN, to me, this is just classic textbook Soviet Russia tradecraft at work. That's James Clapper said on CNN. He said of the authorities investigating if recently published emails are tied to a Russian dish. So there he goes on CNN and lies. And now here's Christina and she's interviewing a right-winger who's going to tell you the truth about the Hunter Biden emails. And Christine is going to pretend that it's a made-up story. So Christine Amanpour is going to present misinformation to deceive her own viewers because her paycheck depends on it. Watch, this is pretty stunning.
Okay, you know what also the United States government says? The FBI says this laptop is not Russian disinformation. So what are you talking about here? This laptop is real. It's not just the laptop. There's other emails. There's text messages. They are real. So according to the U.S. government, the FBI has verified this.
Everybody to look at that, but that's not what we're hearing from the FBI.
Why don't you want to report this? This is one of the most powerful families in Washington. The Biden family. And you're okay? You're okay with our interests being sold out to profit Joe Biden and his family when we're suffering during a pandemic from communist China? He's doing shady business deals with communist China. You're comfortable, okay?
As you know perfectly well, I'm a journalist and a reporter, and I follow the facts. And there has never been any issues in terms of corruption. Now, let me ask you this.
Did you just hear what she said? I'm a journalist and I follow the facts. And let me...
And there has never been any issues in terms of corruption. Now,
and there have never been any issues surrounding Joe and Hunter Biden about corruption? How does she, with a straight face, she says this? And watch her guess how incredulous she is.
Let me ask you this. Yesterday, the FBI...
Wait.
FBI
how do you know that?
I'm talking about reporting and any evidence. I'm talking to you now.
Okay, I would love if you guys would start doing that digging and start doing that verification.
No, we're not going to do your work for you. I want to ask you a question. The FBI,
it's a journalist's job. It's a journalist's job.
So she's now saying that confirming a story is true or not is not what journalists are supposed to do. That's someone else's job. Again, we know that CNN had to hire a factcheck.org to do their fact-checking for them. You'd think a news organization would know how to check facts. She just admitted that they're not going to do it, and they're just going to push the CIA line, which is exactly what CNN did. Aaron, how stunning was that to you when you saw that?
I mean, this whole episode was so embarrassing. It showed that all these journalists are fundamentally opposed to free speech, and they're fundamentally committed to being partisan hacks. I mean, literally trying to censor a legit story. I always thought the story itself was not that significant. I mean, the corruption in Washington is pretty normal. So what I saw of it, it didn't seem like that abnormal what Hunter was doing, basically trading on his influence. Although, even though, I mean, his story itself is so crazy. I mean, what we know about him, for example, taking a lucrative seat on a board of a Ukrainian gas company, Burisma, just after his father's administration has engineered a coup there. And that was insane. But the fact that everyone was willing to tolerate the censorship of a story, to suppress it being shared on social media, even if it was totally misinformation. I mean, still, either you're for free speech or you're not. Now, of course, but the fact is, it was obvious that this was not misinformation. But the way they justified it is that, well, some anonymous former intelligence officials tell us it might be Russian disinformation. And because we were subjected to a 4-year Russiagate disinformation campaign, because that's what it was, bombarding the public with propaganda that they're being subjected to this fake, non-existent Russian influence campaign, and that the president might even be an asset of the Kremlin, it was successful because so many people in media obviously don't, contrary to what Christiane Amanpour says, don't see themselves as journalists, but as partisan hacks.
So I agree with you 100%. There's way more to this story. Let's keep going.
Serious questions tonight about whether the Russians are using Rudy Giuliani to interfere in the U.S. presidential election. CNN senior national security correspondent Alex Marquardt is joining us. Alex, there are fears that what Giuliani is now pushing here in the United States could actually be part of Russia's latest and very massive disinformation campaign in the U.S. presidential election.
So now everybody's a traitor. Rudy Giuliani is also a traitor. Mr. Mayor, the mayor of America on 9/11. I don't know if you guys remember, but that guy was heralded as a hero on 9/11. And afterwards, watch when he went on David Letterman's show. They're sitting holding hands and crying together. What a giant. David Letterman referred to him as a giant. Now that guy's a traitor. The guy was mayor of New York. Now that guy's a traitor to our country, too. The mayor of New York's a traitor. And CNN just throws it out there. Just casually, flippantly, just like, yeah, Rudy Giuliani's working for the Russians. Yeah, turns out. And we're going to bring on some asshole to tell you about it. Want to hear an asshole tell you about it?
We do know that it's a very active Russian campaign. That's according to the U.S. intelligence community.
We do know. No, you don't know. So this is the same thing Rachel Maddow does. She goes, we learned this week from the FBI. You don't learn things from the FBI, Rachel. You're supposed to debunk things from the FBI and the CIA. That's what he just said. Well, we knew though this because the CIA told us. The CIA is lying, you dummy. Of course he knows that. He's paid to lie. They hire these guys. This guy's been groomed to lie like this since he was in kindergarten. So is Wolf Blitzer. That's why guys like me or Aaron are never going to be on CNN because we don't fit the narrative. We actually do tell the truth. We're not going to go along with the establishment claptrap and the propaganda that comes from the CIA and pretend that we learned something or we know something because the CIA, if the CIA says something, it's probably false. 99% of what they say are lies. And so this guy goes, well, we know it's true because the CIA says. That's why people don't listen to CNN, and they shouldn't, and why people shouldn't listen to this guy. This Kyle Griffin says, this is not censorship. Facebook is under no obligation to allow a disputed report that appears to contain disinformation to spread on their platform. These are the shit of the shit-libbiest people in the fucking world. I mean, they have no problem doing this kind of shit. This was last year pro-censorship. That's all that's pro-censorship. These people would fit right in the country they're claiming to be afraid of, which is communist Russia, which isn't even communist anymore. They're a bunch of shit libs like we are here. This guy would fit in right in China, right in North Korea. That's what they do there, and he's cool with it. Of course they should censor.
Jimmy, that guy works for MSNBC, and by his expressed standards there, by those standards, every single MSNBC story about Russiagate should have been banned by Facebook for 4 years.
That's right.
Right. So, I mean, it's completely hypocritical, and also and again, the premise of his claim is not even true because there is no disinformation there. That was a genuine laptop. It just unfortunately inconvenienced failed democratic elites, and that's why it had to be branded as Russian disinformation and literally censored. It's so crazy, but it's the direct product of what we got for 4 years. And this is why it's so sad for any progressive who got duped into going along with this. Because why were we talking about Russia for 4 years? Why were we being told that Putin is the reason why we got Trump and had brainwashed all these people into not voting for St. Hillary? Okay, why? It's because failed neoliberals didn't want to reckon with their own failure and their own humiliation at losing to Trump, who is this con man who pretended to be a champion of the working class. And the working class in enough states were so contemptuous of the neoliberals in the Democratic Party that they were willing to take a chance on Trump, because at least he was speaking to what they were living through, and he was acknowledging their concerns, whereas Hillary Clinton was presenting the same old failed neoliberal agenda, and people got tired of it. And so we should, instead of talking about that, and instead of talking about the contents of the emails that were stolen from the Democratic Party and released, which showed major corruption, including rigging the primary against Bernie Sanders, we instead got whipped up into this conspiracy theory of a Trump-Russia plot. And to discuss the content of those emails, it was presented to us as that was then we were doing Russia's bidding. We were doing what the evil Putin wants us to do. So it was a disinformation campaign against facts, and to dupe people into thinking that if they question failed neoliberal elites, then they're somehow the victims of a disinformation campaign. The reality was the reverse. It was the failed neoliberals who were targeting the American public with a disinformation campaign. And it's so successful that it got basically everybody in the corporate media and a lot of people in the progressive media to go along with it. And the tragedy is, like, we think about people like Bernie Sanders. The emails showed these people were biased against him. And then they lost. And then they lost to Trump. And instead of using that as a moment to say, look, wow, these people are not only corrupt and rigged against people like me, but also they lost. I mean, their record was up for a vote and it failed. Instead of seizing that moment and making that the message, Bernie Sanders and a lot of other progressives catered to it, and they propped up the disinformation campaign that was really being used to preserve the power and privilege of the same people who tried to destroy the progressives in 2016 and who lost. It's such a tragic scam.
And here's how Joe Biden was allowed to deflect. Watch this. He's asked about this story before the election. Hey, how was your role as vice president in charge of policy in Ukraine and your son's job in Ukraine? How is that not a conflict of interest?
It's not a conflict of interest. There's been no indication of any conflict of interest in Ukraine or anywhere else. Period. I'm not gonna respond to that. Let's focus on the problem. Focus on this man, what he's doing that no president has ever done. No president.
What? I don't want to talk about. Let's talk about this other guy. Let's talk about Donald Trump, who's doing things that no other president has ever done. What that is, no one will ever say. He tweets mean things. That's what he did that no other president has ever done. Hey, and then here is Joy-Ann Reid. Good for Joe Biden. No need to dignify a Russian hatchet job strained through Rudy's utter brokenness with a response. We're not doing emails again, America. 18 days. Just vote and ignore the nonsense. So there's, again, another pretend news person who's a paid liar. And she's just lying about a fact. And that's why the country's in the place that it's in, because they go to the New York Times, Washington Post, MSNBC, and CNN to get news. And they're not getting news. They're getting propaganda 100%. And here it is. Somebody asked Joe Biden about it, and watch what he does. He does a very thing that they say Trump did.
And Mr. Biden, what is your response to the New York Post story about your son, sir?
So what is your response to the New York Post story about your son? That's a legitimate question. There's a story in the New York Post, I think the oldest newspaper in America. What is your response to it? Say it's bogus if you think it's bogus. Say it's not true if you think it's not true. Say I don't want to comment on it because it's good. But watch what he does.
I know you'd ask it. I have no response. It's another smear campaign. Right up your alley. Those are the questions you always ask.
And did you...
He goes, I knew you'd ask about that. He goes after the guy. It's right up your alley. He goes after the reporter who asked the goddamn question. Biden adopts Trump's playbook, attacking pool reporter Bo Knows News for asking about Hunter Biden's story, which has been the focus of the President Trump's campaign over the past few days. Fine to attack the story, but why personally insult Bo? Because that's what they do.
Because they can't actually attack the story. They can't actually address the story because the story is true.
That's
so
right.
You have to launch a personal attack on the reporter asking the question.
And then here's Neera Tanden, right, who's come at us at this show for telling the truth about her advocating for war crimes in Libya, stealing their oil. She advocated for stealing Libya's oil and spending that money back here. She says, how are you all circling the wagons instead of being embarrassed for peddling Russian ops 18 days before the election? It's not enough that you all haven't learned from your atrocious handling of 2016. So they're blaming, again, not Hillary Clinton. It's the media's fault that she lost to Donald Trump. It's everyone else's fault. And there she is blaming. She's truly incredible. What's truly incredible is that you're not in prison. That's what's truly incredible, Neera Tanden, that the whole Biden administration hasn't been put in prison. They're all war criminals. And so there she goes. There she is wagging her finger at the press. I thought that's what Trump did. Oh, no, except the neoliberals are exactly like Trump. They are the thing they claim to hate. They are the thing. They're the enemies of you. And here's Glenn Greenwald. He says Democratic Party hacks and many of their media allies genuinely believe it's immoral to report on or even discuss stories that reflect poorly on Biden. In reality, it's the responsibility of journalists to ignore their vapid whining and ask about newsworthy stories anyway, even about Biden. A journalist's credibility does not depend on how popular they are among Democratic partisans. Craving that popularity is almost certain to lead journalism into corrupted realms. Enduring and dismissing partisan Twitter attacks is a necessary part of being a good journalist. So, yeah, you're going to have to put up with some partisan attacks. I put up with them all the time. People come at Aaron all the time, the Gray Zone. They come at Glenn. They come at this show. Anybody who tells the truth about Russia, Syria, the Democratic Party, they're going to come at you on Twitter and anywhere else to make videos about you. They're going to attack you for telling the truth. Get used to it. And that's what he's telling people, and they're just not going to. And I want to show you this. Now, here's the biggest Russiagate hack there is. Now, how this guy won a journalism award is beyond me. It must have been, it was all handed to him. But I'll tell you this. Here's James Risen, and he pushes this garbage. Watch this. Their latest falsehood once again involves Biden, Ukraine, and a laptop mysteriously discovered in a computer repair shop and passed to the New York Post. It wasn't mysterious, James. If you did any little reporting, Hunter Biden dropped it off. It wasn't mysterious. So he puts that word in there to make you think it was invented. It was concocted. Instead of Hunter Biden dropped it off, and everybody knows that. So this is James Risen. I'm going to go one step further. He's not gaslighting. He's flat out lying. He's just a big liar. The New York Post story was so rancid, meaning accurate. I guess that's what he means by rancid. The New York Post story was so accurate, the U.S. intelligence community had previously warned a Russian intelligence operation to disseminate disinformation about Biden, and the FBI had been investigating whether the strange story about the Biden laptop is part of Russian So yeah, the intelligence community, who lie about everything, were trying to suppress the story. Okay, I guess that's good for you, James Risen. Too bad he's not. This week, a group of former intelligence officials issued a letter saying that the Giuliani laptop story has the classic trademarks of Russian. A group of former fucking liars who ran a torture program are saying that. And this is James Risen sat down and typed this out, ladies and gentlemen. And these people have credibility. He still gets a six-figure salary from the billionaire who pays him to write this kind of lies. And by the way, Glenn Greenwald had to leave the Intercept. So he's printing this at the Intercept, which is all they print is garbage about Russia and Syria. That's all they print. And he had to leave because he was going to tell the truth about Hunter Biden. So they fired him. Glenn Greenwald resigns from the Intercept following dispute over Biden's story. And by the way, this is Hunter Biden being asked if it was his. Watch this.
Was that your laptop?
For real, I don't know.
I know, but you know that this
I
is
really don't know.
Okay.
The answer is.
You don't
the
know
truthful
yes
answer.
or no if the laptop
I don't have
was
any
yours.
idea. I have no idea.
So
whether
could have been yours.
Of course, certainly. There could be a laptop out there that was stolen from me. There could be that I was hacked. It could be that it was Russian intelligence. It could be that it was stolen from me.
Did not deny it. Said, yeah, it could be. It could be my laptop, but it also could be all this other stuff I'm making up. So it could be your laptop because it turns out it was your laptop. And here's what Buzzsaw had to say about it. Hunter is spreading Russian disinformation. What does Putin have on Biden? Is Robert Mueller available? So that he was spreading misinformation right there. You're exactly right. And I want to, so they covered this on The Rising, right? The Hill's, that billionaire funded right wing, The Hill, which is hosted now by The Intercept's DC bureau chief, Ryan Grim, who we've documented him lying for politicians and the Democratic Party at this show. We've outed him many times. And he also tried to muddy the waters on Syria, tried to discredit Aaron's reporting on Syria, and he tried to discredit Force the Vote. And we caught him being a big piece of it. And so he covered this story without mentioning that the place he worked for censored it and got rid of Glenn Greenwald over it. Doesn't mention it. But what does he say? Watch this.
On them. The U.S. media should report on them.
U.S. media should report on them. But you guys censored. You're the D.C. bureau chief of The Intercept. I'm going to guess you were in that editorial meeting saying we should get rid of Glenn Greenwald and we should censor this accurate story from the New York Post. I'm going to guess you were in that meeting, and you're a big censorer. And here he is doing a story on it, completely ignoring that fact that his Intercept and him are super big censors, and they were for censoring this story. And now he says, of course we should report on it. And then he passes some more disinformation. Watch this.
On them. The U.S. media should report on them, regardless of what the source is. The only thing that matters is, are they true? Can they be confirmed? And are they newsworthy? Are they relevant to the public? So, did Russia have something to do with Hunter's laptop? We don't know. We don't know enough to say.
And he's still spreading Russiagate misinformation. Still, what do you make of that, Aaron?
Well, I don't think Ryan was involved in the censoring of Glenn. That was Betsy Reed and a few other editors who work with her. And what Ryan's doing here is the fact that he's even entertaining that's a possibility that this could be from Russia. It's like, so by what standard then can we judge claims like this? Like, then by the same standard, I could say that Ryan's suit is a result of Russia. And even the words he's saying were written by Russia. Like, to be able to speculate this might come from Russia, there has to be some kind of evidentiary basis for it. And the fact that a bunch of former intelligence officials who've been helping to flood the country with a Russiagate disinformation campaign for 4 years tell us that it might be from Russia is not grounds to entertain the possibility that it might be from Russia. There has to be some evidence for it. And the only evidence we have points to the fact that any claim adduced to Russia is a part of a Russiagate disinformation campaign, one that a place like The Intercept sadly took part in, with the exception of Glenn Greenwald. And the fact that he refused to abandon that, and he insisted on covering this Hunter Biden story, forced his departure. That's how sad The Intercept has become. And it would be cool if Ryan could now admit that what the editors there did to Glenn was wrong. I mean, we need to have some kind of minimal integrity, or else this playbook will be recycled down the line. I mean, some people on the left were okay with this because the target was Trump, right? And they wanted to see Trump lose, okay? But what happens in the future when, I don't know, someone's challenging, let's say some good progressive comes along, challenges a neoliberal in the Democratic primaries, maybe for president. What's going to happen then? Well, just like they did to Bernie during the 2020 primary, the playbook that's been established is they can come and say, oh, we think that Russia supports them, or they're repeating Russian disinformation. And this is a playbook that's been normalized with the consent of basically a vast array of left liberal media figures and a lot of Democratic voters and people who consider themselves on the left. It's so toxic, and it's like it plays into just all these nefarious forces, like failed neoliberal elites who want to pass anything off that threatens their power onto Russia, and Cold War hawks who want to use fear-mongering about Russia to increase tensions with Russia. It's so toxic, but yet everybody either enables it, or in the case of Ryan here, just can't come out unequivocally against it. He has to kind of play both sides, which is just it's sad.
It is sad. I want to watch him do it again. So, but you're saying that the DC bureau chief of The Intercept probably wasn't in the editorial meetings where they decided to censor that story? Probably wasn't?
Yeah, well, Glenn released the emails that he exchanged with his colleagues when they were trying to kill his story. They were trying to censor his story. And if my memory is correct, Ryan wasn't involved in that. It was Betsy Reed and I forgot the other people. Oh, Roger Hodge.
Okay, all right.
And yeah.
Okay. So he wasn't. Yeah. He wasn't in that email chain. He probably wasn't directly involved with censoring Glenn, but he does take a 6-figure paycheck from the place that censored Glenn. And is there any evidence he pushed back against it?
Not that I've seen it. It would be cool if he came out now and at least acknowledged that what his colleagues did to Glenn was wrong.
He's still pushing the lie halfway. You saw it. Watch. I'll show it to you.
On them, the U.S. media should report on them, regardless of what the source is. The only thing that matters is, are they true? Can they be confirmed? And are they newsworthy? Are they relevant to the public? So, did Russia have something to do with Hunter's laptop? We don't know. We don't know enough to say yes or no. But what happened at the time is that.
By the way, his co-host there, former Trump advisor. Just so you know, he's sitting there doing a news show with former Trump advisor. I thought that wasn't okay with the shit libs. Now, I've always advocated talking to people who are on the other political aisles of you, and people who don't agree. They don't. You're a bad person if you talk to Tucker Carlson, if you talk to Trump, if you talk to a libertarian, if you interview a Boogaloo boy who's anti-racist and anti-Trump. So, but apparently you can get paid to sit next to a Trump advisor. Isn't that wild? Do you find a little isn't that, what do you make of that, Aaron? Anything? You wanted to comment on that? No?
I don't care.
Me neither. Okay. I find that interesting.
I just want to say, Jimmy, we need some more courage out there. We need some minimal journalistic standards where if you're going to entertain this notion that this story that's really damning for Hunter Biden and Joe Biden might come from Russia, there needs to be some kind of basis for it. And given the fact that we've bombarded with a propaganda campaign nonstop for the last 5 years, and we just got to be willing to call it out. And it's still, no matter how many times it gets debunked, just now, again, this new confirmation that the Hunter Biden emails were authentic. And just now with this indictment, as we talked about in the last segment, of a Hillary Clinton lawyer for lying to the FBI while taking part in a Russiagate scam, people need to be willing to just raise the minimum level of acknowledging that we've been fooled for 5 years with the complicity of so many liberal and left media outlets. I'm tired of being alone on it with you and Glenn Greenwald and Matt Taibbi and Max Blumenthal and other Black Agenda Report, others. It's only a very small amount of people on the left in lefty media who are still willing to acknowledge the basic fact. Everyone is still shook by Russiagate. They're not willing to step up and just say what a scam this was.
But we are, and that's what separates us from the hacks, like Ryan Grim, who's still pushing a false narrative about Russia and Hunter's Biden laptop with a straight face on a right-wing billionaire-funded news show. That's your left. Okay. Aaron Mate. Everybody check out Aaron's work at Substack. Is it substack.mate.com? Is that how it goes? How does it go?
Mate.substack.com.
That's it. Mate.substack.com. Check out all his work there. Support him because he's not getting a check from Ryan Grim's boss. He's not selling out to the establishment. He's actually pushing back against the establishment. And we appreciate all the work he does over there at the Gray Zone. All right, Aaron Mate, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Hey, everybody, we're doing stand-up shows everywhere. We're going to Florida, Baltimore, Buffalo, Portland, Raleigh, North Carolina, and we're doing a live Jimmy Dore show in Sacramento, October 3rd. Go to jimmydore.comedy.com for a link for all our tickets.